Well, we're in the second part of the series, 800-Pound Gorilla, and we're following along a storyline of a guy named Elijah. Now, Elijah's job was prophet, and the simple job description for a prophet was to go and to speak, to go where God told him to go and to say whatever God told him to say. But even though the job description was simple, the job was far from simple. And that's why I love the story of Elijah. You see, so many times we take these people in the Bible and we elevate them up and we kind of create some distance and say, well, yeah, but Elijah was a prophet, but Paul was an apostle, right? We start to put these labels and we kind of distance ourselves away. And in fact, they were people just like you and like me. And what we're going to see, in Elijah's story is he responds just like you and just like me. Well, in part one of the story of Elijah, we saw God's power. In fact, Elijah saw God's power firsthand. He saw God's power through fire being rained down from heaven. He saw God's power as a hand, a fist, the shape of a cloud brought rain that hadn't come to the land for over 3 years. But all of a sudden God said, now the rain is going to come. And personally, for Elijah, God's power came upon him. He outran King Ahab. Now, we're not sure what King Ahab was riding, but he was a king. He was riding something, maybe a horse. But Elijah outran him all the way to Jezreel, which was, King Ahab's summer home. Elijah gets there and he waits. Why? Remember a prophet's job description, to go. So he ran and then, to speak. And so Elijah just waited for God to give him a message to give to King Ahab. But you see, something interesting happens. God never gave him a message. In fact, Elijah received a message from the evil, maniacal Queen Jezebel, who had just returned from killing other prophets of God, of Yahweh. And she sends a messenger with a message that said, hey, Elijah, by this time tomorrow, you're going to die. Now remember, a messenger brought the message, not an army, not a hit squad, not mercenaries. A messenger brought a note. But there's something about tomorrow, isn't there? Which really gets to the essence of, the 800-pound gorilla that you face and I face. In part one, we focus in on our brain. And this little part of our brain, the shape of an almond called the amygdala. The amygdala is all about our emotions and our memories. And you see, it's the amygdala that sets off our whole body to react when we see a threat. This is a powerful part of our survival. Maybe you've heard of the fight or flight response. The amygdala has everything to do with setting our bodies into motion for our fight or flight response. So when we see a snake or we see a grizzly bear, mama grizzly bear to be specific, who's trying to protect her cubs, right? We want to run. Or if you're a parent and someone comes to steal one of your kids, right? You want to fight, right? It sends into motion when we see a threat to fight or to run away from it. It's powerful. But our amygdala responds the same way when we think about a threat. And that's why anxiety is so rampant for all of us. It's when we think about a threat is when the 800-pound gorilla starts wreaking havoc in our minds. It's why a note being delivered to Elijah sent him what? Running. He was afraid. And he ran for his life. And you see, and that's where we pause the story in part one. Elijah, a prophet of God, who just witnessed God's power in 3 amazing ways, and now he's running. Why? The 800-pound gorilla said, hey, you might die tomorrow, and he ran. Now, there's a cycle that we all go through. And as we make our way through this series, we're going to be looking at, this 3-step cycle and, how to well, kind of curtail the cycle as well. But the first step of the cycle is, well, what we see in Elijah's storyline. Escape. He ran. He got out of there. And for you and me, we're masters of escaping, aren't we? Again, escape is powerful. If you see a snake or you see a bear protecting her cubs, I mean, that's powerful. Driving on I-80 and a truck starts to move into your lane, right? That's powerful. But when it's tied to our thoughts of what might happen tomorrow, escape starts to look in different ways. How are you escaping? Maybe for you, you're escaping by drinking or substances. And you're just trying to self-medicate through alcohol, through pain meds, through other methods to try to avoid focusing on those thoughts of tomorrow. Maybe for you, it's scrolling. You got your phone in your hand and it's TikTok or Instagram Reels or headlines. I mean, you just spend hours just scrolling. All of a sudden you look at the time and you're like, where did time go? And for you, that's your escape mechanism. Maybe for you, it's sleep. Now, there's a healthy part to our mental health, caring for our mental health and sleep. And we'll talk about that here in a bit. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking the escape version. You see, for me personally, I've always loved 20-minute power naps. Ask my wife, Kim, she knows. Like about 2 o'clock, if I have my perfect work week, 2 o'clock, I take a 20-minute power nap. I mean 20 minutes. I'm out, I wake up, and now I can work until midnight, 1 o'clock. It's just how my body's wired. For some of you, a 20-minute power nap, I mean, you wake up from that and you feel more tired after that. Not me. But what I have come to realize over the last, especially 18 months, that my 20-minute power naps aren't so much about being a power nap. My 20-minute naps are about escaping. I feel this overwhelming urge just to sleep. And it's not because I want to rest to work more. It's because I just want to stop thinking. Is sleeping an escape mechanism for you? Maybe for you it's work. That's another one I deal with. And that's why it's been an interesting 18 months between my desire to sleep, to escape, and work to escape, and those collide. But maybe for you run a business, a small business, a big business. Right now, you're just working a lot, and you kind of puff yourself up because you're like, hey, it doesn't matter. It's a difficult season, and I'm not doing great, mentally, emotionally, but I'm working. Yeah. Okay, you're working, but are you really escaping? Is that your mechanism? And if it is, it's only going to intensify your anxiety. Maybe for you it's play. You got that game on your phone or PlayStation or on your computer, Xbox, Switch, you name it, you know. Again, it's one thing to have a little downtime where you just want to lose yourself in the game. It's a whole nother thing to start using that as your escape mechanism. Or maybe for you, just quit. Quit a relationship, quit a job, quit church. You just want to quit. Because you're like, I just can't handle the stress. I hear this all the time. I can't handle the stress of my job. I can't handle that person. I can't handle church people, right? Whatever you want to attach to it. And so what they think is if I quit that, if I quit my job, find a new job, then my anxiety will go away. But here's the reality. If you're quitting to escape, it's going only to intensify your anxiety. I mean, here's the truth for you, and here's the truth for me. That you follow you wherever you go. You do. So you can quit your job to get a new job, but guess what you're going to find out one day? All of that anxiety, your 800-pound gorilla, it's going to follow you there. And you're going to have to deal with it. And usually what people do, they just keep quitting. And they'll blame a boss, They'll blame the employees. They'll blame the customers, right? There will be a list of blame. And maybe you're doing that right now. You're blaming everyone else. But in all reality, you follow you wherever you go. You can quit church. Go find another church. And I'll tell you, when you do that, you're going to find yourself in a new church. And you're going to start blaming the pastor and blaming that person at the door or blaming those people sitting in the seats. And all of a sudden, you're going to quit that church again. You're going to just repeat. Why? Because you follow you wherever you go. And that's why we have to recognize what we do to escape. And we got to do something about it. And for Elijah, he ran, he escaped. But guess what, Elijah? He followed himself. Wherever he chose to go, his 800-pound gorilla didn't stay in Jezreel. His 800-pound gorilla stayed right in step with him, just like your and my 800-pound gorilla stays in step with us. And we're told in the story that he ran. And he ran all the way till, the city named Beersheba. Now, this is an important clue. Now, he outran Ahab to Jezreel. And Jezreel was, again, the summer home of the king of the northern empire, King Ahab's home. And so that's part of the northern kingdom. And, Beersheba is one of the southernmost cities of the southern kingdom. So Elijah ran not just out of the northern kingdom, he went as far south as he could of the southern kingdom. I mean, he's really escaping. He's really trying to get away. And when he got to Beersheba, we're told in the story that he left his servant or his assistant there in Beersheba because, more than likely, that was the last safest place for him to leave his assistant there. And so he left him there. And then we're told that, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. So he went further south. I mean, that's in our cycle. That's escaping, isn't it? I mean, he mastered running from his gorilla. But guess what? You follow you wherever you go. And escaping always leads to the second step of the cycle. Maybe you're a step ahead of me and you know what that second step is. We isolate, don't we? He left his assistant, his servant, in Beersheba. And all of a sudden, he started wandering south by himself. Now, the easy form of isolation is literal isolation from people. You shut yourself into your house. You never come out. I mean, you limit your relational exposure. And that's a real part of isolation. But I think we isolate in, many more ways, especially when it comes to thoughts in our mind. Yes, Elijah isolated physically. He separated himself from his servant. Maybe that's what you're doing right now. But maybe you're not isolating physically, which leads to what I just simply have called isolation traps. And these isolation traps are the games that our 800-pound gorilla plays in our mind. Now, at the very end of part one, I shared, this verse. And I want to bring this verse back because this is so important as we focus in on these isolation traps. The Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians says, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. And this is so important for us to do. I mean, this is an action type of verse. That every thought that comes into our mind, we should take captive. Take captive and say, hey, I'm going to make it obedient to Christ. Jesus, what do you want me to do with it? Hey, Jesus, does this follow your pathway or my pathway? Does this follow a pathway that leads to life or leads to destruction, right? Taking every captive and putting it through the lens of, hey, Jesus, what do you think? What should I do? Hey, Jesus, help me out with this thought. So with that in mind, let's just look at some common mental isolation traps. Which one are you falling into right now? Well, this is one of them. I don't want to bother you. You're dealing with the 800-pound gorilla. Anxiety, depression is just, circling around within you. And you think to yourself, I need to talk with my friend. You think to yourself, I need to sit down with someone. You think to yourself, hey, I do need help. But then the 800-pound gorilla whispers to you, you don't want to bother people. Now, you might not say it a different way. You might say it like this. You might say, well, I just know that they have so much going on. I just know they're so busy. I know they're dealing with their kids and their business. They got so much going on. I just don't want to bother them. It's an isolation trap. And you see, we're clearly told, the Apostle Paul wrote it this way, we're told to carry each other's burdens. When the load gets too heavy for us to handle by ourselves. I mean, this is what we're called to. And Christ followers, I just want you to know, if you're a Christ follower, you're called to carry each other's burdens when the load gets too heavy for someone to carry it by themselves. And he goes on, he goes, hey, this is the law of Christ. And you got to ask yourself, well, what's the law of Christ? Well, Jesus said, I came not to, abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. And then he starts to define what the law is. Jewish people, 613 laws. And Jesus goes, love. Love. You see, this is what love looks like. For us to, carry each other's burdens. So as you think to yourself, no, I just don't want to bother anyone. Guess what? There's a whole bunch of people that want to walk with you, to help you carry a load that's too heavy for you to carry yourself right now. And it's okay for you to say, it's just too heavy. And maybe that's what you need to say right now to yourself. Hey, it's just too heavy. It's just too heavy. The load's too heavy. What would have happened if Elijah would have looked at his servant and said, it's just too heavy right now? But instead he dismissed him. And the isolation trap of, I just don't want to bother you, almost always, not all the time, just most of the time, will lead to the second isolation trap. No one cares about me. And you'll find yourself just because no one cares. Well, where it really started was, I don't want to bother anyone. So what you did was you set up a big wall around you that just shoved people out. I mean, not verbally, but with your actions, with your emotions, you shove people out. And so you created distance, and now you feel like no one cares about you. Why? Because you didn't want to bother anyone. They don't know. And then you'll think to yourself, well, they should know. Well, maybe they should know. Maybe they just don't know because you're so good at pretending that everything is okay. But if we just pause on this isolation trap, no one cares. You see, this is what the 800-pound gorilla does. It comes up with statements that once you get it out in the open, once you bring it from the dark of your mind into the light, no one? That's not true, is it? No one cares. I'm just telling you, I care. I lead with an incredible group of leaders across all of our churches that care deeply. Not about the church as an organization or a building, but as a church, a gathering of people. I'm just telling you, our churches are filled with people that deeply care, that want to carry each other's burdens. Why? Because the law of Christ's love compels them to care deeply. I'm just telling you, no one is not real. There are people that care deeply. My encouragement for you is this. Let's go back to these words that Paul wrote. Carry each other's burdens. This might be the game changer for you. When you feel like your burden is too heavy for you to carry yourself, and you invite someone in to help you carry your burden, guess what happens? I promise you, there's something they're carrying that's too heavy. And then you help them. When you choose not to isolate by keeping everyone out, and you actually take a step in and say, hey, I'm here. I'm going through a really difficult time, but I'm here. I want to help other people. When you step through your burden to help other people, when you realize that it's about carrying each other's, not just expecting someone to carry yours, but that you want to be available to help other people. Why? Because the law of Christ, love, compels you to do that. I'm just telling you. Something powerful happens. Why? Because we weren't built to isolate. God designed us in his image to be in relationship with each other. So right now, maybe the greatest thing you need to do, even though you're in a very dark place, is start helping other people carry their burden. And right when you go, but Chris, I don't have it in me. Fine. But God says he'll give you strength. God says that he will be your portion. God says he will be your peace. God says that he will be your strength. So just because you don't have it in you, that's when you lean into God, and he will fill you up to help you carry someone else's burden. I'm telling you, when you do that, you'll get outside of the isolation trap and realize that God can use you right where you are to help other people. The question is, are you going to do it? But you see, the Apostle Paul goes on. He goes, for each one should carry their own load. You see, sometimes with this isolation trap of no one cares, in all reality, you want to shove your entire load on someone else. And that's why you feel like no one cares. You're trying to give them everything. And Paul goes, whoa, time out. The law of Christ says we're going to carry each other's, but there's a portion of your load that you still need to carry. And maybe for you, you're just trying to shove it all on someone else, and that's not fair to them. In all honesty, it's not going to help you. So what portion do you need to carry? And we'll look at that here in a few moments. But all of this comes down to this, and I hope this just breathes some hope into you. We're to cast all our anxiety, all of it, on him. Why? Because he cares for you. I mean, God's like, hey, give it to me. I got big shoulders. God's like, give it to me. I'm enough. Give it to me. I'm present. Give it to me. I love you. Cast all of it. Say, God, I need you now. The gorilla is out of control. I'm just going to give it to you. No one cares? That's not true. Maybe for you, the isolation trap is I feel ashamed. You feel ashamed because you've gotten to this place and the gorilla is wreaking havoc, and you're like, how did I get here? I should have known better. I thought I was stronger. And probably the most difficult, damaging statement. I thought my faith could get me through. You have to understand, sometimes in life, you need other people to help you through. That's why we're to carry each other's out of the love of Christ, because we love each other. See, guilt is all about feeling bad for an action I did. Shame is all about feeling bad about who I am. And that's why shame gets attached to this. You feel like you should have. You feel like you should have had more faith, or if your faith was strong enough to help you through, you feel like, you should have been a better friend for someone. Shame just starts to take over your life. And that's why I love what the psalmist says. The psalmist goes, I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. And then he says, those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. You know what God is saying? God's saying, here, look at me. There's no shame. God's saying, look at me. I see what you're going through. God's saying, look at me. I know your anxiety, your fear, your depression, all of that emotion. I know it's running around. Look at me. I got you. No shame. No shame. And you're going to see this play out in such a powerful way in Elijah's story. A loving, grace-filled Heavenly Father. This just says, hey, look at me. And maybe this is your isolation trap. I should be able to solve this myself. Maybe this is where you're stuck. I got to solve it myself. I got to solve it myself. I got to solve it myself. And we all go through seasons of life where we can't solve it ourselves. Us men probably fall into this trap the most. I just got to be strong enough. I'm just going to power through. And maybe, just maybe, it's the worst thing you can do. Because you can't just get through it yourself. Remember, God created us for each other, to be in relationship with each other. To the letter to the church in Thessalonica, Paul wrote these words. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up. We all need encouragement. People to speak life and stand beside. We all need people there to help build ourselves up, especially when we go through seasons that are difficult. You see, as a church leader, it's been a difficult, almost 2 years. Just leading through COVID and the impact around the world in our local communities. I got invited last summer and this past summer to go to Montana and to have a week at a place called the Refuge Foundation. Refuge is all about helping Christian leaders just to find, some refuge. I posted this picture on social media, and a lot of the week was spent on a boat with a fishing guide and one other guy, and we just spent a lot of time fly fishing, and I just love it. There's just nothing like just the peaceful nature of being on a boat on a river in some of the most gorgeous country. But you see, the Refuge Foundation, it's not about fishing. The power of the Refuge Foundation is about just bringing other guys together. You see, I spent a week with a group of guys. I knew 3 of them from before. The rest of them I met while I'm there. And for this introvert, that's always a challenge, but it's a life-giving challenge because I know by the end of the week, I'm going to be so richly blessed by getting to know people. I just have to fight through my introvertedness. You see, 2 summers ago, there's a guy named Tom, and Tom's at the very end of this photo in a dark blue hat. Tom is a very successful business owner. He owns many different Mack Volvo truck dealerships across the South. And 2 summers ago, he shared with a whole group of guys, a different group of guys, but he shared about his depression, anxiety journey. And he just opened it up because I would love to talk to any of you if you, just want to talk. I remember 2 summers ago where I was like, I needed to talk to him because all of a sudden I started realizing I was going through my own depression, anxiety journey, and it was kind of new for me. I had never really experienced what I was experiencing, but I didn't have the courage to talk to him because I thought I could do it on my own. I'll figure it out, I said to myself. I have the strength. I just need to figure some things out. But in reality, I was escaping and isolating. And I'm really good at it. Well, I came into this last summer, and the first night we're sitting around this big dinner table. And Tom shared the same thing. Same thing that he shared the year before. Because I'm just here. He shared his story about depression and anxiety. And this is a guy, again, on papers, highly successful business leader. Because I'm just here to help. If any of you want to talk, I'm here. But you see, this last summer was a little different. God gave me a right hook, a kick in the backside. I found myself walking up to Tom. I say, hey, Tom, I need to talk. He got a big smile on his face. He goes, I'd love to. He goes, what about tomorrow night before dinner? I said, sure. Next day I went and fished all day, and he was on another boat fishing all day, and I came back and took my shower, and I remember walking in, and we had about a good hour and a half before dinner, and there was a group of guys just sitting down talking. I just sat down, we were all talking, and I saw Tom, and I knew I needed to walk up to them, but again, like there was something within me. There's like now, like some of that fear and some of that, like I can figure it out myself, and all of that 800-pound gorilla was just rolling through my head, and all of a sudden Tom walked up to me and said, hey, do you want to talk? I said, sure. It's what I needed to take a step. That conversation helped catapult me. And I just want you to know, you're not alone. That's why this series, we want to provide resources, help for you. You can go to tcconline.tv, and we have a whole host of resources that we just want to provide for you personally. If you're a parent, for your kids, for your teenagers. And you see, there's two different maybe columns when we think about help and resources and carrying each other's burdens. There's a you-centered, a you-centric, only you can do. And there's an others focus, an others-centric that you need to be aware of as well. You see, when it comes to you, maybe what you need is counseling. There's professionals that are gifted to help you. And if you take a step and you find a counselor and you just don't connect with them, or maybe they're just not a good counselor, go find another one. There's someone that can help you, that understands, that wants to walk beside you. Maybe for you, and Tom helped me with this, maybe you need some medication right now. So many times in the church world, medication is one of those taboo things. I'm just telling you, if you fell and you broke your leg and you had a bone sticking out of your body, right, you would go get medical help. They would give you medication to help your physical body. But when it comes to our minds, maybe your mind right now is just broken, fractured, and there's medication that can help you. Tom was such an encouragement to me because I had some just self-imposed concerns around it. And he just normalized the conversation for me personally. Another thing that you can do is care for your physical body. You need to get good sleep. That's going to help your physical body. You need to eat right and exercise. Like all of those three things together will help your physical body. That's going to help your mind. Now, on others focused, on the carry each other's burdens, you got to go to church. It's not about the building. It's about the gathering. So many people have stopped going because they haven't felt like it. In all reality, they're isolating. You see, walking into one of our physical campuses, it's about gathering. It's about being with people. And I tell you, at the essence, it's about carrying each other's. Maybe you show up, not because you feel like it, but you show up because you're expecting God to use you and your story to help someone else who's there who doesn't feel like it. Life groups. Get connected with a group of people. It's what they're for, to help each other out. Join a serve team. Show up and just smile. Even if you don't feel like smiling, smile. Because sometimes we need to do the things we don't feel like doing to help us avoid escaping and isolating. And across our different churches, we have different gatherings, men's gatherings, women's gatherings. And why are we doing this? We're just trying to connect people together. So when you see those pop up on our event site, take a step in and gather with them. Remember, we're called to help each other out, even when we don't feel like it. I'm going to pray for all of you, and then when I'm done praying, we're going to give you 45, 60 seconds. 2 questions are going to come up on the screen. I'm just going to encourage you. Be active with those questions. Let me pray. Lord, I just pray. You'll help every single person out. that they know you are there for them, that you see them, that there's no shame. Lord, I pray for every single person. For them to recognize how they're escaping and how they're isolating. And that they, right now, in this moment, can do something. To slow down the cycle, to stop the cycle. That they don't have to fight the 800-pound gorilla by themselves. In your name I pray.